Get going here this morning with you, Rhonda. How's that sound? Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. And I'm so grateful that you just called me sunshine, because I used to be called that by somebody that I just adore. And I haven't heard that for decades. So you just made my day, Scott.
Yeah.
As usual. As usual.
Well, guys and gals, we are honored here. Glad to make your day. When we thought of Peace and Pivot, you were the first person that came to mind. I was like, oh, we got to get Rhonda Britten on here because you bring so much energy. You're working with so many people to help them find pivots and peace in their lives and overcome the fear. And so if you guys don't know who this lady is, you are in for a big treat for the next hour. She is an Emmy Award winning, she's a repeat Oprah guest, master coach. She's changed lives in over 600 episodes of reality television. She's the author of four bestsellers, including her seminal work, Fearless Living, and is the founder of the Fearless Living Institute, home of the Ivy League of life coaching training, named America's favorite life coach. She's the one, the only, my friend, Rhonda Britten, join us here on the Peace and Pivot Summit this morning. So good morning. We're so honored to have you here this morning, Rhonda.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Juliet. Hi, Scott. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so excited because you're right. I have been, the minute this ended, the minute this was going down, I basically volunteered myself to speak. You got fans, you got folks, you got community, you need some support. I am right here for you. Because as Scott was saying, that I am, I've been doing fear for, 25 years I've been doing Fearless Living. And right now, I think what's really amazing and how we can pivot and how we can use this to our, I hate to say the word benefit, because obviously there is tragedy happening all around us,
right.
But we can use it to support ourselves and move forward in our lives. So, and think of our own lives differently, because what I've been saying and what I know to be true is most people don't walk around saying I'm afraid or I'm scared, right? Like every day, we're not going, I'm afraid, I'm scared. We don't just do that, right? But what we do right now with the global pandemic is we are saying, I'm afraid. We are saying, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We do feel our overwhelm, our anxiety, all of those procrastination, perfectionism, all of those things at a deeper and higher level. And some people think that's bad news. I think that's great news, right? That's great news. Because if we can actually tell ourselves the truth about the cracks in our foundation, because I think this is what this is bringing to us, right? This, like right now with the global pandemic, if you have cracks in your foundation, you're seeing them. Mm-hmm. You're seeing them. And those cracks in your foundation are meant to be healed, filled, and more importantly, get a stronger foundation on top, Scott.
Yeah, that's such a truth.
Yeah, so we want to build a foundation that, because again, I really think that right now we're starting to see everything that we're like, oh my God, if I only wish I had, if I only wish I could, if I could have, if I would have, if I could have, and all of that is really just all the cracks in our foundation and all the ways that we can start looking at the way we live our lives, the way that we show our values, the way that we run our businesses, and actually look at what's really fundamentally the most important thing for us. And I think if we get back down to our values, back to our basics, and really look at the foundation of our lives, we can really make huge changes. And not only huge changes just to make a change, but huge changes to deepen our connection, not only to our own passion and our own purpose and to our own peace, but to our clients as well, because right now they need us more than anything. And I have been, I've been talking to my coaches, my own personal coaches. I train coaches, certified fearless living coaches, and we've been having meetings, and I'm telling all of them, like, there's no time to tell me you don't look good on video, right? There's no time right now to tell me, you're worried about your writing. Like, there's no time. Like right now is a time to give, a time to support, a time to be there for anybody and everybody in your tribe, in your community, your clients, to over communicate and to really let them know you're here for them. And that's going to build long lasting relationships that are going to supersede and go and build your business way past what's happening right here and right now. So I want to share, since I think one of the most important exercises that I've been giving is the one I'd like to share now, because I'd like everybody just to think about the things that are working in their lives and not working in their lives, and the things that they're feeling anxious about and the feelings they're not anxious about, the things that they're worried about, not worried about. Like, just start thinking about those things right now. Just put them in, just like allow them to flow out of you. Because I'd love to give you an exercise right now, and then we'll keep talking a little bit more about fear and how fear works, because I think it's really important that we have a firm foundation of how fear works, so we don't think we're crazy during this time. We don't think we're weak during this time. We don't think we're lazy during this time. We don't think we're, like, what's wrong? What's my problem? Why am I like this during this time, right? But I'd love to give an exercise right away, if you don't mind, Scott, that can help people right now with perhaps the feeling of overwhelm, over anxiety, feeling out of control, helplessness, powerlessness, maybe even a little hopelessness, maybe even a desire to give up. So I'd love everyone, if you're willing, to grab a piece of paper, and grab a piece of paper, and then put a line right down the middle of it. So grab a piece of paper and a line right down the middle of it, okay? And on the left-hand side, I'd love you to write the word control. And then on the right-hand side, I'd love you to write the word no control. So on the left-hand side, control, the right-hand side, no control. And we're going to talk about fear in a minute, but right now I want to get really practical. So left side, control, right side, no control. Okay. Now, on these control and no control, what I want you to do is I actually want you to write down the things that you have control over versus what you don't have control over, right? So on the right-hand side, the things we don't have control over is we don't have control over when the coronavirus vaccine is going to come out. Don't have control over that. We don't have a control over when the global pandemic is going to end. Don't have control over that. We don't have control over whether we're going to be in lockdown. Now, we can influence by staying in, sheltering in place, etc. But we're not the ones that are going to say lockdown eased, right? We're not in control of if we can get a grocery delivery on Instacart, right? We're not in control about so many things in our lives. And that's what causes the overwhelm and anxiety, right? The feeling of out of control, the feeling of, I think anxiety is the number one feeling that most people are feeling right now, because there is so much uncertainty, there's so much volatility, so much ambiguity, so much uncertainty, right? And we want to claim it, go, yeah, I'm not in control of these things. So go ahead and write on the right-hand side, the no control. So love that. Write those things down. Now let's go over to the place that we do have power and control. Let's go over to the place that we have control, all the things in the control side. So what do we have control over? We have control over what we put in our mouth, what we eat. We have control if we're drinking water or not. We have control how we're sleeping. We have control whether we get up and get dressed. We have control over whether we brush our teeth. We have control over whether we connect to others. We have control whether we're attending something like this that really supports us and gets us, back in our mindset of empowered, powerful, right? We have control over so many things. You may not have control every thought that goes through your head, right? Because thoughts just move through you. But you do have control over what thought you court, what thought you grab onto and hang on to. You have total control over that. Just like our feelings, we have all these feelings moving through us. You may not have control over being able to change feelings immediately, but you do have control over what feeling you want to court. So in the control list, I don't want it to be general. I don't want it to be health. Health is too general. I want you to be really specific, because the more specific you can be, the more you can have impact over it, okay? Now, this is the key. You have this no control list, which is what makes us all anxious. And we have this control list. Well, what I want you to do on the control list is I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 10 for every one of those things. So drinking water, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? Are you a 2? Are you a 5? Are you a 8? What about vegetables? Are you eating vegetables? Are you getting nutrients? Are you taking your vitamins? Scale of 1 to 10. Where are you? A 2, 5, 8? What about sleep? Are you getting sleep? So what I notice is that when people are willing, when you are willing to take back your power, and how you do that is to take back what you can control and start focusing there, the more the things we can control recede in the background. the more we're not focused over there going, what's happening? What's happening? Now, mind you, I'm a news fanatic. I watch news all day long, and it's the things I can't control. But what it does support me in is, Rhonda, what can you control? What can you control? So I can control my sleep, I control my food, I control my greenery, I can control, again, whether I connect. So one of the things that in isolation, sheltering in place, and we can call it solitude. A friend of mine, Andy, calls it incubation period for creativity. So what we can control is in your power. And I promise you that if you start focusing on the things you can control, the things you can control will now, like I said, recede in the background, and you won't like be looking and keeping your eye on those, right? And that's where we want to get our power back, because during this time, it is super easy to feel powerless. Super easy to feel powerless. So we want to continue to take our power back and remember that we have so much control over our day. We have so much power. Because remember a minute ago, I mentioned volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. That phrase, VUCA, came from the military because the military wanted to do some research on what happens to soldiers during war. And they came up with VUCA. It's volatility, it's uncertainty, it's chaos, right? See, chaos, and A is ambiguity. And that's what many of us are feeling right now when we're not focused on the things we can control, right? We're going up and down. If you're like me and like my clients and like the hundreds of people I've been talking to, is, 1 minute you're like, yes, I'm going to take the opportunity, I'm doing it. And the next minute it's like, oh my God, why bother? Yes, I'm going to do it. Oh, why bother? Well, we want to get steady in there, right? We want to get to that centered, steady place so that we aren't pulled like a little doll, right? We don't want to be pulled up and down, up and down, up and down. Instead, we want to be steady. So we want to take that VUCA term, that volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity, and we want to turn it into what they say is calm, CALM. Calm stands for clarity, and the exercise I just gave you is going to start giving you some clarity about what's working in your life, what's not working in your life, as well as where you can put your power, where you can take back control, and where you can start feeling empowered. So clarity is one of the ways to start putting VUCA in the background. The other, calm A, is assurance. Assuring yourself, assuring your family, assuring your children, assuring your coworkers, assuring your employees, your virtuals, your team, starting to assure them that everything is going to be all right, and being the voice of reason, being the voice of calm. And the only way you can actually have that in a powerful, impactful, and authentic way is by doing the control and control exercise. That's one of the ways to do it. So we've got VUCA, right? Volatility, uncertainty, right? Chaos, ambiguity. And we want to move it to calm. C, clarity, give yourself clarity, and that's going to help you cut through the confusion, right? The chaos. A is assurance. You're going to assure the people around you. Now, L is called leadership. And that's why we're here today, right? Because we are wanting to be leaders, and we are leaders. We're seen as leaders. And at times like this, we may not feel like a leader. Maybe we may feel like, well, I don't got my stuff together right now, so how can I lead? And the fact is, you are a leader. So it's time to kind of pick up the sword, so to speak, and really claim your leadership in a whole new way, right? Like a minute ago, I was telling you about talking to my coaches. And my coaches, I've been like, I shared the VUCA to calm as well. And it is no time to sit and judge, no time to sit and decide if you're worthy, no time to sit to decide if you look okay, no time to decide if your writing makes sense, no time to decide that. Your tribe, your community, your people, your coworkers, your family, your friends need you to show up as a leader. And because you're here, I know you already are. So think about where you're not taking that leadership. And just FYI, part of leadership is actually taking care of yourself. So where are you not taking care of yourself so that you can show up as a leader, okay? Which we'll talk about more in a minute. And then lastly is M, right? So we went to VUCA to calm. And M is movement. Keep moving, whether that's moving your body in exercise or moving in your business, i.e. writing that next email, because I know we might be thinking, oh my God, I can't over communicate, Rhonda, because if I over communicate, everybody's sending out these emails and I don't want to be a bother. It's like, no, when you're giving them calm, right? When you're giving them clarity, assurance, leadership, and movement, they're exactly the person. You are exactly the person they need to hear from. So that is our opportunity, right? We want to move from VUCA ourselves to calm, but we also want to take our tribe, our employees, our family, our friends, everyone around us, anybody that can hear our voice and see our face. We want to take them from VUCA to calm. And so your opportunity is to find that clarity, assurance, leadership, and movement so that you can contribute it to your tribe, contribute it to your community, contribute it to your clients, contribute it to your staff, your team, right? And of course, your family and friends. So going back, I just want to point out full circle here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about fear so you understand what's going on with you. And then I have one more exercise to give you, maybe two, okay? So again, just to be clear, I want you to really hear this. If you don't have a piece of paper in front of you, I really invite you to do that right now. Because what I'm sharing with you are things that are going to keep your mindset impactful, powerful, and empowered. And regardless of how you're feeling throughout the day, we want to have the tools to actually take our power back, to say, yes, I can do this, to really make ourselves feel calm and centered and steady, right? I mean, this summit is called Pivot, Peace and Pivot. Notice it's called Peace First, right? We've got to find peace before we pivot. We've got to find that calm. We've got to find that clarity before we pivot. Now, again, movement, right? Just moving is awesome. But then we're going to have to start choosing more powerful decisions, making powerful decisions, and in order to build our business, save our business, grow our business, make our business even more secure, right? More foundational built, okay? So again, we're going to go from VUCA to calm. One way to do that is using the control and no control exercise so you can start taking your power back. I think that's really important. I don't know, Scott, what do you think? Important to go from VUCA to calm?
I totally agree to that. You got to do that. And I love what you said before. I didn't want to interrupt you because that's kind of the things. When you think about the military, you exactly hit the nail on the head. They put things in specific order. There's specific habits so that when you do have chaos, well, just go back to doing the same thing over and over again. So it's kind of as much as you can stick to a schedule or write things down. Are you getting your sleep? Are you getting your exercise? Are you getting your green vegetables in a time of chaos, which is very important? I kind of tentatively kind of plan out my diet here a little bit, or what we're cooking for dinner a little bit to try to make sure, okay, we're not just eating hamburgers every night. Let's make sure we get some greens in it because we need that stuff, right?
That's right. Well, you're bringing up a really good point about self-care. And, people have been saying, even, if you're on social media, if you're on the news, like self-care is going out the window, right? Because people are anxious and overwhelmed, et cetera. And what I really know to be true is that when you leave self-care out, you will not have the resilience and you will not have the clarity to actually move forward in a way that supports you. So self-care is actually the foundation of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Mm-hmm. So we have Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Scott, I don't know about you, but you and I are always trying to get to the top, self-actualization, right? We're like hang out. We want to hang out there. We want to be self-actualized. We want to be empowered, right? We want to be we want to be it, right? Well, now, Scott, everybody on that Abraham Maslow of needs is like, falling down that hierarchy of needs, hanging out with, with their fingernails. And, bottom line is when we're in chaos, when we're in that VUCA state, we must foundationally start at the bottom of the Abraham Maslow's of needs and make sure that our needs are met, our most basic needs, before we ever move into self-realization and actualization. So if you want more resilience, if you want a better attitude, if you want to feel more empowered, self-care is going to be critical for you to be able to have the energy to make the decisions, the brave decisions that maybe are being maybe you're being called to make. Because what I know to be true is that when we do not have self-care, we do not have a firm foundation. We will not have that clarity. We will not trust ourselves as much, and we will not have resilience. So self-care, even though it seems like poo-poo, right? Like poo-poo, I don't have time for that. I must, save my business. I must grow my business. It's like, no, actually, you're going to your decision-making is not going to be on track unless you do that self-care. So I'm with you, Scott. What I've been doing is I've actually been, twice a week, I make all my, herbal teas, and I have big giant mason jars, and I make like 6 of them. So I have them for the next, 3 to 5 days. Then what I do is, like today, I'm going to make my muffins for the week. And
Nice.
so, yeah, I might put like eggs and spinach and broccoli and a bunch of vegetables in my muffins, put them in the oven, take them out. I have 12 muffins for the week, and I can, eat 1 or 2 if I'm hungry, so that I keep my energy up. I'm going to cut all my vegetables today for the week. And I know some people are like, cut your vegetables for the week. Well, my sister, Cindy, well, she knows what to do. You cut your vegetables, you put them in a container, you put your red peppers, again, whatever your vegetables are, and you stack paper towels, if you have paper towels, and you stack it in your vegetables, paper towel, vegetable, paper towels, and those suckers last forever,
Yeah.
right? So, so control, no control, VUCA. So Scott, I want to go back and talk about how fear works, just so people understand what's happening inside of them. Is that okay?
Go right ahead. It's all yours.
All right, thanks. So one of the things, like, people might be thinking, like I said earlier, like, I'm not afraid, I'm not scared. And like I said, now the global pandemic brings up our fear. So let's talk about what's happening inside of us from a neuroscience perspective, so we don't feel crazy. I know for me, that's the easiest thing. Like when I was moving through my own tragedy, my own horrific times in my life, I could feel crazy. I could feel worthless. I could feel like a loser, even though one minute I'd be, winner, next minute I'd be loser, winner, loser, winner, loser. And when I started understanding how the brain worked from a practical application, right, how it really works in our daily life, my life changed. So let's talk about the brain. Let's talk about the brain. So the brain, a couple things I want you to know about the brain is, 1, the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So let's think about that exercise I gave you about control and no control. If the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, it doesn't know, if you're focused on what you're not in control of, the brain is going to be preparing for that. The brain is going to be trying to figure that out. That's what the brain's going to try to do. And that actually, remember, is where you have no control, where you have no impact per se, right? So the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. So 2, the brain doesn't know the difference between physical fears and emotional fears. So physical fears, right now, global pandemic, coronavirus, physical fear. We may be like, okay, I don't want to get sick. Oh my God, I don't want to infect my family. Oh my gosh, right? I just got back from Australia and I quarantined myself. Well, actually, I'm going on day 4 times 7, 28, day 28. Actually, today, day is 28. Days that I have been quarantined, incubated, locked down, isolated, solitude, whatever you want to call it. And if I want to, right, if I want to choose to, because it's a choice, I can focus on those things that I'm not in control of. And my imagination can go run wild. And that physical fear, the physical, i.e. I could die, because that's what physical fears are. Physical fears are, I don't want to die, I want to survive. But remember, the brain doesn't know the difference between a physical fear and an emotional fear. So when you are starting to feel anxious, when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, when you're worried about rejection and failure and success, when you're worried about loss, when you're worried about identity, when you're worried about the unknown, all of those emotional fears, because those are emotional fears in the world of fearless living, those emotional fears actually do the same things to our body, brain, and heart that physical fears do. So if you think about jumping out of a plane, some of us get excited, but some of us, are like, right? Or I don't particularly like heights. And so, they have that walkway in New York that you can go out of one of the tallest buildings in New York, and it's glass, so you have nothing underneath you. I will not be doing that, right? I will not be doing that. So what happens when we have a physical fear, and most of us can admit our physical fears, right? I don't like snakes. I don't like I don't like, heights. I don't like spiders, right? But think about how you feel when you have that physical fear. You might have a body sensation. Heart might start palpitating. You might start getting a lump in your throat, right? You might start having like, oh my God, might start feeling anxious, and you might start having some thoughts about, oh my God, I'm going to bit. Oh my God, something bad's going to happen. Oh my God, I'm going to fall, right? Well, when we're having those emotional fears, the fear of failure, fear of success, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of identity, fear of the unknown, fear of not being good enough, those same physical sensations, those same emotions, those same thoughts are actually going to move through us as well. And I don't know about you, but what I thought for most of my life is I thought those were my problems, and I thought I was being lazy or weak or stupid or worthless. So when I would have those thoughts, when I would have those body sensations, I would try to shove them down. I would try to ignore them. I tried to deny them. I tried to pretend they weren't happening, because I didn't know that what had happened is I had a fear trigger. I was triggered by fear. I didn't know it. And so I would blame myself and put myself down and tell myself I'm weak, lazy, stupid, etc., and worthless and not good enough. And in fact, what was happening is I was just triggered by fear. I was the one that was judging myself. I was the one that telling myself I wasn't good enough. I was the one that was doing that, which again lowers our self-confidence, lowers our self-esteem, and lowers our ability to move forward. So really start paying attention to, wait a minute, emotional fears and physical fears. Wait a minute, maybe Rhonda's right. Maybe I'm not lazy, stupid, crazy. Maybe I am just triggered by a fear, and that fear is having that feeling move through me, activating my body, shutting down my throat, giving me a headache, making me doubt myself, making me feel powerless, making me feel like 1 minute a winner, 1 minute a loser. What if I'm not the crazy one? What if there's nothing wrong with me? And I think that's a really important thing to start realizing, because I know for my students that most people come to me and they don't even know they have any fear, right? And one of the things that I ask my clients to do when they first start working with me is just to start noticing what we call fear responses. And fear responses are all the things that most people think are their problems. And these are the responses to your trigger that is unconscious, invisible, insidious, don't even know it's there. And so, for instance, some fear responses are perfectionism, people pleasing, procrastination, complaining, comparing, beating yourself up, putting yourself down, shaming yourself, blaming others, etc. So those are just a sampling of fear responses. And those fear responses are not things to blame ourselves for, or to judge ourselves for, or to say, oh, what's my problem? Why am I doing this? Instead, it's about, oh, if I'm procrastinating, there's a fear under there. If I'm being a people pleaser, there's a fear under there. Okay, wait, if I'm being a perfectionist, there's a fear under there. If I'm feeling anxious, there's a fear under there, right? So again, that anxiety, that worry, that overwhelm, right? We've talked about two things so far. We've talked about control and no control exercise, and we've talked about VUCA as well, moving from VUCA to calm. So I want you to just for a minute, kind of sit back and go, okay, wait a minute. What if every negative thought I have about myself, or when I want to beat myself up or use beating myself up to motivate myself and get myself going, what if that was actually triggered by fear and I wasn't to blame? Because that's what we want to do during this time, right? We want to build a stronger foundation. We want to know what we're made of. We want to know who we are and who we could be. So, because again, right now, all the cracks are showing, and all the ways our values that we're not living them, that we haven't been living them, are showing up. So we're probably having some business, like, oh my God, I don't have enough money, right? Or I haven't shored this up over here. Great awareness. But we're probably also having some cracks in our opinions of ourselves and who we thought we were, and maybe even our values. And so again, it's not a bad thing. Seeing cracks is awesome, because then we can build a firmer foundation. So far we've talked about control and no control. We've talked about VUCA to calm. We've talked about a little bit about the brain. Ooh, there's one more thing I want to say about the brain. So we've talked about imagination versus reality. Brain doesn't know the difference. So when you read something or you say something to yourself and you start acting as if it's true, your body and brain will respond as if it's true. If you start getting heart palpitations or physical sensations or a backache, and you're not running around doing something outside and you're like, why do I feel this way? It's probably because you're having an emotional fear. Because remember, the body and brain doesn't know the difference between a physical fear and an emotional fear. And the last thing I want to share with you about the brain is that they have discovered, they're doing research now, and they're discovering that some of the fears that we have are actually handed down through our DNA. And handed down through our DNA means, I have clients come to me all the time like, why am I like this? Why am I like this? Why am I like this? And you know, there's two things. One, it's because of fear. So that's one. And two, you may never know the reason you feel anxious. You may never know like actual, why do I feel anxious in trauma times or difficult times or crisis times? Is it might've been handed down through your DNA. Your great-great-grandmother or your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather might have handed this down to you. Thanks, grandma. Thanks, grandpa. Right? So,
Damn it all.
yeah, exactly. Right? Right, Scott? Right? So what are you hearing so far, Scott?
Well, I think we all deal with that a little bit. The voices in our head. You know, sometimes why do we act like we act, and we're like, why am I acting like my mom, or why am I acting like my father? Kind of falls in that aspect of things, especially probably
Well,
more stressed
yeah,
we are, right?
yeah, and even things like little habits that we have, or again, those little fears that we have. It may not be, and it may not even be our mom and dad. It might be our great great grandfather, right? Like we don't even. It's not even in our. Like we can't even see it, right? So I hopefully that gives you a little relief. You know, I know when I tell that to my students or my clients, they feel a little relieved, like, oh, you mean, oh, wait, oh, okay. You mean I'm not crazy? I'm not, okay, okay, got it. This is good. I like this. All right. It's not all my fault. No, it's not all your fault. You know, the world doesn't even talk about fear besides people saying, don't be afraid or feel the fear and do it anyway, and false evidence appearing real. And to be honest, those things never worked for me when I was stuck. That's nice. Those are nice cliches and they're true. But they never helped me get over my humps in my life. So Scott, I don't know if we're having questions. I know that we're live on Facebook. Are people writing down questions or comments or anything like that?
Got a couple comments. Let me pull it up here. I just was on there on the Facebook Live.
And I would love if anybody has questions, because I have another exercise that I'd love to share. But if anybody has a specific question, you know, I've been getting questions like, Rhonda, what do I do with, you know, A, B, and C? So anybody have any questions about what's going on in their life right now, going on in their business, going on in their personal life, anything I've said so far that makes you have a question or a comment?
How do we remove this? Here's a question, and it's Regina from South Florida said, self-judgment is the worst critic of all. It creates havoc in our lives. How do we get beyond the I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and doggone it, people don't like me right now aspect of things?
Right. I know. Well, you know, I'm gonna bring up a client, and then I'll give an exercise to support Regina. I have a client and a student, because he's now become a certified fearless living coach, named Garo, and he's an engineer, and he's like 30, 32. He's from New Jersey, you know, tough guy, engineer. And when I first started talking to him about there is no value in beating yourself up, that self-judgment is very seductive, because it makes you think that you're beating yourself up, giving yourself feedback so that you know what you need to change. And Garo's like, yeah, I mean, you know, I beat myself up and put myself down, have that negative self-talk in order to motivate myself, he said, right? Like it's motivation, okay? And I'm like, okay, so it's motivation. So how effective has it been? How motivating is it? Does it support you? Does it build your self-confidence? Does it build your self-worth? Does it build your self-esteem? So does beating yourself up build you up or put you down? And he's like, well, but if I don't beat myself up, how am I going to know what's wrong with me? How am I going to motivate myself? And it was really interesting, Scott. This is pretty funny, because that day he actually went to a elementary school to talk to a group of sixth graders about, you know, supporting them, motivating them, talking about being an engineer, et cetera. And I said to him, I said, well, because he was like not wanting to give up his beating himself up, putting himself down, his self-judgment, right? He wanted to keep that, right? And I said, so Garo, did you tell the sixth graders all about your strategy to motivate yourself? He's like, what? I go, well, did you tell the sixth graders to beat themselves up, to judge themselves, put themselves down? Did you tell them this, thing that you do and use in order to motivate yourself? And of course, he looked at me like, I would never tell sixth graders to do that. And I'm like, yeah, and if you can't tell a sixth grader to do it, you can't do it either. Because we fear indulges us. Fear asks us to indulge ourselves, because fear has one job and one job only, Regina, and that's to keep us safe. Okay. So what does safety mean? For most of us, safety means the same, stuck. So let me tell you one more thing about the brain, Regina, and then I'm going to give you an exercise to support you. Is that the way that our brain works now? They've done neuroscience is always growing and evolving. And I'm reading this really cool neuroscience book, because I'm a neuroscience geek. And now what they're talking about is that the brain is it's holistic, right? It is not like this fear is here and love is here. That's not really how the brain works. And the brain has these things called brain maps. And the brain maps are formed, but now we're plastic, right? Our brain has neuroplasticity, so we can change our brain maps. But if we're feeding it the same information, we're going to get the same results, right? So what the brain does, we have a decision to make. We have a choice to make. Something's happening in our life. And we have to decide what to do, right? In that moment, we have to decide what to do. Well, unconsciously, in autoresponder, the brain automatically, because it wants to save energy. So just FYI, the way the brain and body and neurobiology work is basically to keep us alive, is to save energy. So that's why we label, that's why we put people in categories, box them up, because I don't have to think. I don't have to get to know you. I don't have to ask you questions. I can just put you in a box and don't have to think about it. Therefore, I've saved energy, right? So in order, when we have a decision, a choice to make, something's happening in our lives, in order to save energy, the body and brain will unconsciously, automatically, invisibly, insidiously look to the past for a template to solve the current problem. So we automatically go, oh, I've got to look in the past for a template in order to solve this problem. Now, you and I both know some of the templates in the past are pretty good, but many of the templates in the past probably not going to serve you very well right now. But that's where the brain and body are wired to go. So we're looking in the past to solve a problem, make a choice. We bring it into the present, and now we're using a past template in the present when we've grown, changed, become different. And then we're thinking that past template in the present is going to give us a different future. Okay. So that moment of choice, that moment of decision, right? When our body, brain, the way we work, the way we're wired goes in the past, right? Is to save us energy. So to have new thoughts, to make new decisions, to think outside the box actually takes energy, which again brings us back to what Scott and I were saying earlier, self-care. Because if you don't do self-care, you will not have the energy to make a different decision. But this is what I also want you to hear. When we're making a new decision, again, that takes energy, but it also brings up the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. See, if we use a template from the past, our body and brain knows what's going to happen. But if we make a new decision, make a new choice from the unknown, well, that can bring up all our fears. So I want you to write this phrase down. This is a Rhonda Britten phrase. It is freedom equals your capacity to live in the unknown. So freedom equals your capacity to live in the unknown. Freedom equals your capacity to live in the unknown. So our ability and our willingness to live in the unknown and make decisions from the unknown, make choices from the unknown, actually is where freedom lies. If you have to know everything before you decide anything, then I guarantee that you're operating, not that you're not wise and wisdom and want to do your research, of course you do. But if you always have to know every single solitary thing before you take action, you and I both know that's a recipe for death and destruction, right? And the sameness, so getting stuck over and over again. So the reason we want to do self-care is to give our brain and body energy so that we can make new choices, have resolve, have resilience during this time so that we can think outside the box and make new decisions. So Regina, when you say that self-judgment, first of all, just recognizing that you do it and start recognizing that you're not purposely doing it, right? It is just an automatic response that you've trained yourself to do, and you can train yourself differently if you choose. So beating yourself up, putting yourself down, that self-judgment, let me give you a phrase and then let me give you an exercise. This is another one of my very favorite Rhonda Britten phrases is, are you making it up or is it a fact? Are you making it up or is it a fact?
I love that. I love that.
It's powerful, Scott. I got to tell you, Scott, every time I get triggered in my own life, every time I'm like, oh my God, right, in my own life, first question I ask myself, Scott, is, am I making it up or is it a fact? And 99.99999% of the time, I'm making it up. And then remember what the brain does. If we make something up, the brain acts as if it's true, and it will start living outside that reality. It'll like live as if that's true. So like I'll work with clients and they'll be like, oh, this person at work or this person in my job or this person in my community doesn't like me. And I'll be like, well, how do you know? Are you sure? Are you making it up or is it a fact? Oh, I know. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Well, you just know. It's like, no, unless they say, I don't like you, you don't know if they don't like you. So, you know, supporting yourself and really calling yourself out, Regina, and saying, wait a minute, am I making this up or is this a fact? Again, 99.9% of the time you're making it up. Why do we make things up? Because we're trying to create meaning for our life, because if we have meaning, we have more safety and security. And in order to make that meaning make sense, we make up stories to go along with it. Because if I have meaning and then I have a story, I can relax because now I've made sense of the world, right? But the challenge is that fear creates meaning and stories that disempower us and don't empower us, that keep us dependent on our anxiety and overwhelm, keep us dependent on seeing ourselves through the eyes of perfectionism or procrastination or blame or comparing, right? Because fear wants us to compare and compete, because then again, we shut down and keep ourselves safe. So beating yourself up, even though it doesn't feel like a choice, okay, it doesn't feel like a choice because it happens automatically, right? We do have the choice of whether to believe it or not, or to say, am I making that up or is it a fact? Because I know for me, Regina, one of the biggest moments in my life was when I decided, and I remember this so vividly, I remember where I was, I remember everything. I remember deciding, realizing that what if people would say to me, oh, Rhonda, you're really smart, or Rhonda, you're really creative. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. When I decided one day, what if people's opinions of me, high opinions of me, like Rhonda, you're smart, you're creative, etc. What if those were true? And what if my opinion of myself was wrong? Mind blowing. That blew my mind. That blew my mind that what I've been saying to myself for by that time 30 years could be manufactured by my own fear and have nothing to do with reality of how people see me. That was mind blowing. So let me give you an exercise, Regina, besides the two phrases I always gave you already, right? Freedom equals your ability to be unknown. Am I making it up or is it a fact, right? Big one, big one, big one. Now I want to give you a homework assignment, and it is called acknowledgements. And acknowledgements is, I want you to write this out. Today I acknowledge myself for. Today I acknowledge myself for. Now, acknowledging yourself, I want you to acknowledge yourself. I want you to be specific, and I want it to be, I don't care how small it is. I don't care how small it is, like how it's not about bigness or smallness. It's just about any movement forward. So you're going to acknowledge yourself for any movement forward. So Scott and I have been talking about vegetables, and we've been talking about water, right? And talking about self-care. Okay. So let's say you've been sleeping, 6 hours a night, and you know that you do better at 7 to 8. Let's say you do 6 hours and 15 minutes. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. You write out, today I acknowledge myself for sleeping 6 hours and 15 minutes. 15 minutes more than I have the last week. Yay, congratulations to me. So you want to actually write down how you move forward, not that you quit beating yourself up, but what you did instead. Like, what did you do? How did you move forward? And I want you to write 5 at least. Right now, you can probably write more than 5 a day because we're home, secluded, right? We've got our piece of paper in front of us. But your opportunity and your homework assignment is 5 acknowledgments a day, because what happens is when you start doing acknowledgments, Regina, your filter changes. So let me just do this real quick. In the world of fearless living, there's something called the Wheel of Fear and the Wheel of Freedom. And those are the models that I teach my students and my clients. I help you identify what's called your core fear so that you know how your personal fear works, because it's individualized and personalized. So my Wheel of Fear is going to be different than your Wheel of Fear. And, so I help people identify what their Wheel of Fear is so they're no longer tricked by fear. And then I help them identify their Wheel of Freedom so that they know what to do instead. So the Wheel of Freedom is the antidote to the Wheel of Fear. So what acknowledgements do, and what the control and no control exercise do, and those the statements that I shared with you, right? The freedom equals your capacity to live in the unknown. And am I making it up or is it a fact? Start opening your mind, giving yourself space to actually move from fear to freedom, because neuroscience says that the only way to truly change your life is by changing your filtering system. So we're looking at a global pandemic. Let's just say that, these glasses are my Wheel of Fear glasses. And I'm looking at the global pandemic through my fear glasses, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to be worried about, I need groceries. I need 20 rolls of toilet paper, right? Because again, I need to hoard. I feel desperate, right? I'm looking through the Wheel of Fear glasses. I'm looking through fear, right? Now, I'm going to switch my filter, because remember, your lenses represent filters. And I'm going to put my Wheel of Freedom lenses on. Same situation, global pandemic. Doesn't mean I'm not going to go and get some food. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to get some toilet paper. But I'm not going to feel anxious, overwhelmed, irritated, frustrated with people. I've been hearing a lot like, I'm trying to social distance and somebody's standing in front of the cheese and they won't move and I need cheese, right? So we're feeling this like frustration, irritation, desperation, wanting to protect our family, wanting to protect our business, right? And again, I know we're not feeling this all the time, but whenever we're feeling it, we've got the Wheel of Fear filter on. So neuroscience says that the only way to truly change your life is to change your filtering system. And Regina, the exercise I gave you, moving you from judgment, self-judgment, because that doesn't serve you at all. There's no good coming of it, right? Don't get me wrong. There's benefits to you that keep you stuck and thinking lowly of yourself, so you don't have to take any risks, the ones that you really want to take, right? But it starts moving you from the Wheel of Fear lenses, right? The Wheel of Fear lenses to the Wheel of Freedom lenses, so that you can move that filtering system and start seeing yourself through a different lens. And when you start seeing yourself and the world through the Wheel of Freedom lens, through the freedom and fearlessness, the world changes. Same situation, same family, same coworkers, same team, same business, same clients, same everything. But now you're coming and approaching it from a completely different way, because you're seeing it differently. You're not using willpower to try to see it differently. You literally do see it differently. Like, it changes before your eyes. Just like the moment when I realized, what if his or her opinion is right about me, i.e., Rhonda, you're smart and creative, versus my opinion of me, which was, I don't have a creative bone in my body and I'm not very smart. Okay. So any other questions coming in before I give my last exercise?
Yeah, keep rocking and rolling. We got a lot of thumbs up. A lot of people enjoying the speak the truth.
Yeah, speak the truth. So Scott's managing the Facebook. So if you have a question for me, you have a comment, you want to tell me something going on in your life, please do. That's what I'm here for. I'm just kind of talking about the things that I think are overarching, important for you to remember during this time. And again, going back to the foundation, it's normal to see a bunch of cracks in your foundation. That doesn't mean you've been doing things wrong, bad, etc. It just means that when we're in something called a global pandemic, it's normal for cracks to show. And now we have the opportunity to heal them, fill them, and then of course, build a stronger foundation underneath us. So Scott, go for it, Scott.
Just want to say that Regina comes back and says these tasks are simple yet practical, and I think that's really one of the most important things out there in this chaotic world, is trying to keep it, the more complicated you make it, the harder it is to get it done, the less likely you're going to do something, right? So
that's
simple
right.
the whole KISS method, keep it simple, silly.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's why I created Fearless Living, Scott, because, you know, I would go to workshops when I was healing my own life, and I'll tell my story really briefly, is, you know, when I was trying to heal my own life, you know, I would go to workshops, I'd read books, I did everything, you name it, I've done it. And, you know, things they'd say, love yourself. And I'd be like, how do you love yourself if you don't love yourself? You know, like people just throw things out like, have a better attitude. It's like, how do you do that? Right. And so one of the things that I have done, and this is my charge, my honor, my pleasure, my role in this world, is to break everything down in these, you know, these complicated theories of neuroscience, these complicated theories, you know, these vague, like love yourself, or, you know, have a better attitude, or, you know, just get more confidence, and, you know, you can do it, and false evidence appearing real, all these things that are out there that are just sentences that we pick up, but we don't actually know how to embody them, live them, you know, kind of get them in ourselves. And that's what I needed. I needed, how do you love yourself if you don't love yourself? Because self-love is beyond self-care, right? Self-love is more than a bubble bath. But I like when people, I'd read a book and it'd be like so inspiring and so motivating, but I didn't know how to do what they said, right? What they said was awesome. I wanted that, but I didn't know how to do it. So I'm a big believer in practical, simple, minute by minute, smallest component, because what I know to be true is that when you change the smallest component of your life, the smallest little thing, it changes everything, right? So you move from judging yourself, you know, 20 times a day down to 15 because you're doing acknowledgements, your life will significantly change. Keep doing your acknowledgements, getting that self-judgment from 20 times to 15, now to 10. Pretty soon this disappears. And acknowledgements is the one way that got you there. Not saying, don't judge yourself. That's not going to be helpful. Right? It's like my niece has a little baby, a 3-year-old, and you know the 3-year-old was holding something, glass, and she says to the 3-year-old, "Don't drop it." And I said, "I don't know how not to drop something. You have to tell the child what to do. Hold it with 2 hands. You know, right? You know, hang on to it firmly. Right? You have to tell them what to do. And what we do in our lives, for many of us, is we do shortcuts and go, "Stop it." But that's not helpful. It doesn't actually change the way we're wired. It doesn't change how we work. Instead, we want to talk ourselves and show ourselves and give ourselves things to do, right? So I'm just going to briefly, because I know people are probably thinking, Rhonda, you're so young and so blonde. How do you know this stuff? And so I just want to share briefly my own personal story. I'm going to tell you about the worst day of my life. And then I will give you my last exercise. I have one more exercise for you, and hopefully that this is supporting you. If it is, give us some, so Scott can see some hearts and some thumbs up. Let's see some hearts and thumbs up. So, you know, I came to Fearless Living by the School of Hard Knocks, right? I had to go through my own tragedy, my own hard times, and I'm going to briefly tell you what they are. I'm going to tell you the short version of the worst day of my life. And I was 14 years old, and I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan, and 365 inches of snow a year, parents separating, it's Father's Day, and my father's coming to take us to Sunday brunch, which is a big deal. 3 kids, 2 adults, 5 people. We never went out with 5 people. That's too expensive. So pretty special that we're going out to brunch. And so my sisters, I have 2 sisters, they're fighting out in our 1 bathroom because that's all we had. We had about an 850 square foot house. And my dad comes over, come on, because that's what dad do. My mother's fluffing up her beehive hairdo. And my mother and I start walking out to the car. My sister's still in the bathroom fighting it out. And as we walk out, my father says, I got to get my coat from the car. So as he's opening his trunk, I notice that he is not grabbing his coat. And instead he grabbed a gun and he starts screaming at my mother, "You made me do this. You made me do this." And he fires. And I start screaming, "What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing?" And he takes the gun, cocks it, and points it at me. And I absolutely 100% believe I'm next. He blinks, I blink. What seemed like hours was probably 2 seconds. And then my mother, seeing that gun in my face, screams out, "No, don't," with her last breath, like literally. And my father, realizing that my mother is still alive, shoots her a second time. And that bullet goes through her abdomen, goes right through her abdomen, out her back, and lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I heard was, eh. And then my father cocks the gun again, falls to his knees, points the gun, and commits suicide. So in a matter of 2 minutes, I witnessed my father murdering my mother and committing suicide in front of me. And I don't know how you would respond, but this is what I responded. It was my fault because I was the only one out there that could have stopped it, right? I did nothing heroic. I didn't grab the gun. I didn't kick my father's shins. I didn't even jump in front of my mother. So that day, what fear told me was, you don't get to be happy ever again. You didn't save your mother, mother dead. You didn't do anything. You don't get to be happy. Because the other thing about fear is fear doesn't care about your happiness and fear doesn't care about your success. Fear only has one job and one job only, to keep you safe. So fear decided that day, and I went along with it, that Rhonda Britten doesn't get to be happy. Rhonda Britten doesn't get to be successful. Rhonda Britten, well, look at what you did, Rhonda. Your parents are dead because of you. Now, logically, I know that's not true, and you and I both logically know that's not true. But we know our logic doesn't necessarily change how we feel inside, right? Logic is nice. That's a great tool that we have. But just because we logically know something doesn't mean that it's not in us and we feel it and we start living outside that other story, right? So for the next 20 years, I became an alcoholic, got 3 DUIs, got 3 suicide attempts. And it was the 3rd suicide attempt that I realized I'm not good at killing myself and I better figure out another way. And I remember being in my little studio apartment in Los Angeles after my 3rd suicide attempt and waking up and recovering. I did go to the hospital. Actually, they put me in a psychiatric ward for 4 days of evaluation, because that's what they do when you try to kill yourself 3 times, to see if you're crazy. They deemed me not crazy, let me go, went home to my little studio apartment all by myself. Not a good idea, by the way. And I remember realizing, if I'm not going to die, I better figure out how to live, because how I'm living isn't working. Now, mind you, during this whole time, like I said earlier, I went to therapy, I went to workshops, I read books. I mean, I did everything. You name it, I've done it. Energy work, shamanism, inner child, you name it, I've done it all. And it was all lovely. And I love it all. It's all awesome. But nothing took away the feeling that there was something wrong with me. It all gave me tools and skills, which were awesome. But it never took away the feeling that there's something wrong with me, that I'm not good enough, that feeling inside of me. And so when I sat in my little studio apartment, I knew I had to figure out a way, because that feeling is the one that I would succumb to, right? That feeling that I was something wrong with me, that I was powerless, that I was helpless, etc. I was worthless, right? And again, it wasn't there all the time. I got straight A's in school. I got a scholarship to college, right? So on the external, I was fine. It was the internal, right? The external and the internal, which I'm sure everybody can relate to. On the outside, you're pretending everything's okay, but inside you're like, right? So my outside, everybody was like, wow, she's a straight A student. I had all these different jobs. So again, people didn't look at me and think there's something wrong with her, right? But I knew there was something wrong with me. So I decided, because I had nothing else that I could try, I started making up exercises for myself. And so every exercise that I share with you, and every exercise I share with my students and my clients, are based on the exercises that I created for myself to change my own life, to move from, a suicidal alcoholic DUI gal to somebody who doesn't think she's worthless and doesn't have those thoughts anymore and doesn't beat herself up and doesn't, it's amazing, because I don't have those thoughts anymore. And those thoughts ran my life for most of my life. So I don't have that self-judgment, Regina. I don't beat myself up. I don't put myself down because I understand how fear works. And I understand that's fear talking to me, and I can make choices to listen or not listen, right? I have other tools that I can use. So I tell you that story because I want you to hear that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, right? As we're going through this global pandemic, all of the things that we worry about ourselves are going to come up. It's going to visit us once in a while. And I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with you, right? It's just fear. And once you start identifying what I call that, that wheel of fear and that wheel of freedom, life makes a heck of a lot more sense. And that shame and that blame and that self-judgment, that putting yourself down, that people-pleasing, procrastination, perfectionism, anxiety, overwhelm, comparing, competing, etc., can fall away. And that's not how you have to look at, you don't have to look at the world through that lens anymore. Instead, you can look at through the lens of freedom. And that's what I want for you. That is what I want for you. And I know that if I can do it, you can do it, because I literally had no help and no resources, and, was waitressing. And I know that, I know that if I can do it, you can do it. I know that to be a fact. And so let this global pandemic, let this moment of peace and pivot, right? That we actually use this time to get internally peaceful so that we can make clear decisions. Go from VUCA to calm, go from out of control to control, right? Move from, am I making it up to a fact? Move it from, and realizing freedom is my capacity to live in the unknown, and start recognizing that you have a choice. And again, I'm not saying it's easy to do in the beginning because maybe you don't understand quite yet, you don't have enough exercises, etc. I am going to actually give you a course that you can start with. But just starting to recognize whenever you have a negative self-talk that you can go, wait a minute, that's not me, that's fear. That's not me. I would never say that to myself. That's fear talking. It's going to start giving you a little relief, a little support, a little opening so that you can have more peace, so that you can pivot in a way that supports you, right? So I want to give a course, and if there's time, I'll give one more exercise. And if there's not time, then I'll just let that go. Where are we doing, Scott?
We got it. We've got basically 10 minutes. The next speaker comes on. So
okay, perfect. 10 minutes. All right,
yes,
great. Is there let me know if there's any questions or comments or anything that anybody needs.
Just people loving, just good comments across the board. So no real questions. People really loving this.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So let me give the gift, and then I'm going to give you my last exercise. I actually have a course, which I completely forgot about, called How to Overcome Fear of the Unknown. And that is where we are right now. So I would like to gift it to you. So what does that look like? You go to fearlessliving.org/gift, G-I-F-T, fearlessliving.org/gift, G-I-F-T. And you're going to put your name in, you're going to put your email in, right? Fearlessliving.org/gift, G-I-F-T. And then you are going to put your name in, put your email in, because you need access to our member center, our learning center, in order to access the course, okay? Now, if you decide to unsubscribe because you never want to hear from me again, awesome, unsubscribe after that, but you do have to subscribe in order to get the course, in order to become part of our system to get access. So go to fearlessliving.org/gift, G-I-F-T, so that you can get that class, How to Overcome Fear of Unknown, and feel free to give it away to as many people as you like. If you know somebody that could use it, feel free to give it. I'm gifting it away to everybody and anyone because I want us to move through this global pandemic peacefully, in our power, and powerful. And we're going to need all of our wits about us. We're going to need all of our willingness to care for ourselves and to choose ourselves over and over again. Okay. So I'm going to give one last exercise, and again, ask any questions. This is the time to ask any question you have. I'm here to support you, so any questions, Scott will tell me what it is. But I'll give you one more exercise, and it's called the worst case scenario exercise.
I love it.
I know, Scott, right? It's great, right? This is actually, so I was in Australia when all this was going down, and when the last day I was in Australia was when America started shutting down. And people in Australia were like, stay here, it's going to be safer. And I'm like, I think if I stay in Australia, I probably won't be able to get home for like 6 months. I better go now. So I got on the plane, and on the plane, on the way home, I did this exercise called the worst case scenario. So what does that mean? I literally want you to write on paper, what is the worst case scenario from this global pandemic? Admit to yourself, because I think we spend so much time trying to avoid it, deny it, stuff it. Like, I got to make sure that never happens, which again, I'm totally for. I don't want it to happen either. But I think our willingness to actually put it on a piece of paper and have a game plan for a worst case scenario, what it does is it frees up that energy that we're using to avoid it and deny it. We're now using that energy to create, to move forward. So when you kind of accept your worst case scenario and know what you're going to do in that situation, then you can create a more impactful plan to move forward. And yes, probably make sure that doesn't happen, but you're not doing it out of desperation. You're doing it out of choice. You're doing it out of creation. So my worst case scenario, I said, okay, Rhonda Britten, I know you do fearless living and there's a whole bunch of fear going on, but what if nobody wants to look at their fear? Well, maybe nobody wants to admit it. Maybe everyone's going to put their head in the sand and go, I'm okay, la, 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 la. And, you know, my speaking events have canceled. My live workshops, I had 4 live workshops that I host, got canceled. I think I had 2 or 3 speaking events that have canceled. So again, you know, worst case scenario, all my events cancel. This stays on for 2 years. Nobody wants to do fear. So what's my worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is I get down to my last $5,000. Get down to my last $5,000. What do I do? Well, if I only had $5,000 left, what would I do? Well, I'd probably put my stuff in storage. Rhonda, you don't have time or room to put your stuff in storage. Oh, okay. I'd give it to a friend. Nobody wants to take your shit, Rhonda. Oh, okay, okay. I'll put it on the lawn. Yeah, that's worst case scenario. I'm going to put my stuff on the lawn. I'm going to fill my Prius up with my essentials. And I already checked my gas tank. I got 3/4 of a tank. And I can make it to Arizona. I can make it to my friend's house. That's my worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is I'm down to my last $5,000. I have to give all my stuff away, stuff my Prius with all my essentials, and drive to my friend Bonnie's house. And maybe from there, drive to my uncle's up in Upper Michigan. And that's my worst case scenario. And I can accept that, right? Again, not that I want that. I don't want that. But I can see that I can transcend that, create from there, live from there, be safe from there. I get it. And so now I don't have to think about it, right? I don't have to think about what am I going to do? I don't have to think about what I'm going to do. I already know what I'm going to do. So now I can use that energy to create and move forward, because that's what we want to do. Why did Scott and everybody host this beautiful summit today? To peace and pivot, because one, we need peace to actually make the best choices to pivot in a way that supports us, not only short-term, but long-term, right? Not only short-term, but long-term. And I told my team, I go, I'm going to be throwing stuff. We're going to be throwing stuff on the wall, and everybody has to be okay with messy right now. We have to be peace inside the throwing against the wall, right? And we have to be peaceful and know that we're doing the best we can and everything we can in order to pivot. Because we have to move fast. It's not about moving slow. It's about moving fast. So it's not going to look pretty, and that's okay. And that's okay. So hopefully what you've got today is that you are not crazy. You're not control and no control. You have more control than you think, and you can take back your power and be empowered. And we want to move from VUCA to calm. We want to know the difference between what we're making up and what's a fact. We want to have that freedom so that we can choose to live in the unknown, which is what we're living in right now, whether we know it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, and do the worst case scenario so that no longer is your fear. You already know what you're going to do. Great. You know what you're going to do. Awesome. Now put it aside and start creating. And the last thing I'll say to you is there's nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. It's just fear. It's just fear. It's not you. So there, hopefully Scott, that gave people something to think about, and hopefully moved them and motivated them into supporting them and feeling more empowered, and that there's nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong, Scott.
There's nothing wrong, exactly. Briant says, powerful, moving life story. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing out there. I'll tell you this, your tools have helped so many, me a lot of times, and it helped Steph. help so many other people out there as well. And so, Ron, if I can help in any way out there,
Thank
thank you so much for giving. Thank you for being such a bright light out there and sharing your story, but helping people overcome their obstacles and making the best out of bad situations out there.
That's right. That's right. And it is my honor and pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be
That
fearless.
was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm really grateful. Thank you. And
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
All right.
And everybody do those exercises. Do the
Yes.
exercises. All right. Be fearless. Thank you.
Be fearless.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Juliet.
Happy
Bye.
Easter to you as well. She's out.